What's going on, STR Nation? Welcome back to another episode of the Short-Term Rental Secrets Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Sjogren, here as always with my main man and brother from another mother, Mr. Emanuel Pani. What's up, E?
My brother, so good to see you. I am beyond excited. One, for the show, obviously, because the guest that we have on today is absolutely incredible. But it is now July 11th, and on July 15th, I get to get on a plane and head back to the motherland for a good month of just family, sunshine, good food. My 96-year-old grandpa is already at the beach somehow. The guy, if you guys know, at the boardroom event last time that I went to the boardroom event, he was going through some health things, and they were just kind of built different back in the day, man. So he's 96 at the beach, already swimming. So I'm super grateful that one, he's still here with us. I get to spend some time with him. My dad is coming also, so I get to spend some time with him. So I'm really looking forward to that soul food that I love so much, and the real food also.
That's one of those blue zones, isn't it? Where
Yeah.
life expectancy is just longer in Sardinia.
We have some of the highest concentration of centurions, which is people that live to over 100 in the world. And so I would sign any document that anybody would put in front of me to make sure that all three of my grandparents that I have left get to 100. So I got two 96-year-olds and one 93. And again, like in the past, I would be like, oh, I need to go and travel and see new places. And now that I'm getting older, I really value and appreciate lineage and family. And so I want to go home. And actually be curious to know, when you guys listen to the show, I'll be in Italy. So if you have any questions you would ask your 96-year-old grandfather, send them to me on Instagram, because I'm planning on having a conversation with him. One of which, the questions that I have for him in my mind already are, what do you think about at 96? Right? Because we spend all our time thinking about the now and the future. But when you're 96, what do you spend your time thinking about? Is it the past? Is it the present? How do you feel about actual dying, right? Do you feel it? Like, can you feel it coming? So yeah, if you have questions that you would love to ask your 96-year-old grandfather, send it to me on IG.
Yeah, do it. I love that.
Yeah.
We just interviewed my grandfather a few weeks ago, or about a month ago, because Caden had a heritage project at school. So heard how the whole story about how we met my grandmother, like where was their first date? How did he propose to her? Like it was really cool, and found some really old family pictures of my great grandfather and a whole bunch of stuff. So it was really cool. So total tangent, but I'd recommend that, especially if you've got some, grandparents that are still around, make that time count, because you never know. So
100%. 100%. Kind of relating to like a big piece of the show today, which is values.
So I was very excited to have this person on. Today we got Angie Wisdom on the show. So Angie spoke at STR WealthCon back in February, and immediately when I met her backstage, we just connected right away. Her energy was amazing. Just somebody, when you get around a certain person where their energy is just infectious and you just feel good and you just know that they come from a place of giving and they're just adding value everywhere they go. So we've kept in contact, and I was very excited. I was on her podcast a couple months ago. We just got her on this one. And so this conversation was really about, I always look at, how do I build a business that works for me and what feels in alignment to me? And she really broke this down in a way that I hadn't really looked at yet, starting from, what are your core values, right? And this is something that most people just skip right over, and they're like, I just want to make money or whatever. But if you really pause and dial into what she's talking about today, you're going to build a business that's, one, going to go way faster, and two, it's going to feel so much more in alignment, and you're actually going to enjoy it because it's serving you, and it's going to feel more authentic, and you're going to attract better guests that resonate with you. So this is one that you're going to want to listen to, and then take some notes and go through these exercises. She is an amazing person. She's a business coach. She's a life coach. She's got an amazing track record. She's got a book, The Unnegotiable You. She's got a journal. She's got a whole bunch of stuff. She has an amazing podcast, Sharing Wisdom with Angie Wisdom. So without further ado, let's just jump into this amazing episode with Miss Angie Wisdom. All right, STR Nation, we have a very special guest with us today. We have Miss Angie Wisdom in the house with us. Angie and I connected back in February at STR WealthCon. She was speaking at the conference and really hit it off. I feel like backstage, talked a lot about, a lot of different things, and just very aligned on our philosophies on coaching and helping people achieve what they want. And this is somebody, I'm very fortunate that I get to meet a lot of cool people just being in this industry and hosting conferences and doing a lot of speaking stuff. And immediately, and I sent her a DM on this after, I was like, your energy is infectious. Like it just pulls people towards you and it just emits those good vibes that are going to pull people get them out of their own way really and just elevate them. So I am very excited to have you on the show today, Angie. Thank you so much for being here. I'm excited to dive in.
What a great introduction. Thank you, Mike. I'm excited to be here. And, I was drawn to you because there's not too many people in industries that help you do something that really go back to the basics of working on yourself, your mindset, and having that real purpose behind what you're doing. And you bring that to your people, which I think is just amplifies their ability to create that success. So I'm happy to be here talking with you about it.
Love it. Well, I'm curious because I don't know your full backstory, right? I've got some Cliff Notes stuff from doing some research, but I would love for you to share with the listeners, how did you get into this whole world of life coaching and helping people, elevate their lives? Tell me the backstory on that.
Absolutely. It was not my intention to be here a long, long time ago. I started out in the financial industry as a financial advisor at Morgan Stanley. And oddly enough, I was not qualified for the position that I applied for. I did not have a 4-year degree. I only had a 2-year degree. And I remember the branch manager always shutting me down and saying, you have to have a 4-year degree until I harassed him so much. And I was great at sales that I finally got the job. And I share that with you because I started that career a little bit as an imposter. I instantly felt like I didn't have what I really needed to be successful. So that created a not so great journey for me. I was successful with it, but I was showing up as someone that I wasn't. I had kind of this ability to be a chameleon and I wasn't super authentic. I didn't know what my values were. All of these things that eventually led me to one day I was crossing days off of a calendar. And if you can think of those movies where they're like rating the lines on the wall and crossing them off like a prison sentence, it occurred to me, I was like, what in the world? I should be waking up excited to start days. And instead, at the end of the day, I'm crossing them off a calendar like, thank God I survived another day. And I thought, what's happening here? And that was this aha moment for me that something was not quite right. On paper, I had the house. I was only 21 years old. Like I was in Southern California, successful, but it wasn't right. That started my journey into going, I've got to look at myself and really understand why I'm showing up this way, what could be different. And from there on out, I started doing that personal development work, ended up switching into management for that company at Morgan Stanley, really grew into my authenticity, my value, what I was capable of, started creating way more success, opened up my own alternative investment firm back in 2003, which I still own and realized if people look at who they really are and do the work on themselves, there is an unlimited amount of success and potential in them. And that became my passion. How could I not share that with people to allow them to create anything they want in their life?
I loved how you said that. And the question that I would love to ask you is, so you had the realization, right? You had that moment. I feel like a lot of people have it, right? A lot of people have that understanding that they're sitting there. They're like, there has to be, there has to be more to this whole thing, right? But a lot of people don't take that first little step. You remember what your first little step was when you're like, this has to change?
I do. I remember going, I've got to answer this question of why I'm crossing days off my calendar. Like, that was my first bit. It wasn't like, "Oh, I really need to do some discovery and develop myself." It was just like, "What's the why behind this? Why am I surviving every day?" So when I started to look at that, I just wanted to answer that question. The first thing that came to me was because it's exhausting. I'm showing up every day as several different people. If I had Bob come in and I thought he wanted me to be one way, I had to get in that mode. If I had Sarah come in and she needed me to be another way, I got in that mode. So I was literally changing hats and personalities 5 times a day. So at the end of the day, it was just like, "Oh my gosh, I get to go home and just be myself and recharge and come back the next day." So that was really that first step for me.
It's so interesting that you say that because when I was in corporate, I was a CPA for a long time, and then I went into corporate finance, and one of my roles was actually an internal audit. So I was like auditing all the internal processes and like looking at efficiencies, and then I would communicate those recommendations to the VPs and senior VPs and everything else. And I remember my boss telling me during one of my reviews that my superpower was I was like a chameleon. For whatever reason, I could adjust myself to anybody's personality and get through to them, and I thought it was a strength, but at the end of the day, it was an insecurity that I couldn't be me and effectively communicate. So I'd have to adjust myself. And it worked. I could connect with a lot of people. But to your point, it was exhausting and it felt kind of lost who I was a little bit. I'm like, all right, am I this guy that's outgoing, or am I the guy that tends to be negative, but I can almost relate to this guy because he's super negative, but I can get my message through? I think having the skill set to be able to do that is beneficial, but doing it from a place of confidence and understanding, not from a place of insecurity of I've got to adjust myself to this person, not just adjust my communication standard.
Right, right. It's one thing to read a room and to know who you're talking to and be relatable. It's another to take on a different identity because you have decided you've read somebody's mind, you know exactly what they want from you, and you slip into that. And it's such a slippery slope because every time you do that, you send a secret subconscious message to yourself that you are not enough. And you're proving to yourself over and over again. Think about it. Every time I got an account and a relationship because I showed up as somebody else, I validated that I needed to be somebody else. And you can, like you said, you can create success that way. That's the scary thing, is that you can have a lot of success, but you will never have as much success as when you are being your authentic self. And that's a mind shift for people. I had to really believe that if I created this much revenue relationships as not myself, I had to really shift my mindset to believe that I could do more than that if I was myself. And that's a big hurdle to get over.
That's such a great point. And
Yeah.
to make this relatable for the audience, if you're an investor or, a co-host that's building up a portfolio, if you look at E and I, we are very different people, right? Like our personalities are different, the way we dress is different. He's tatted up, I'm not tatted up. We're very different, but we both attract who resonates with us, right? I remember, oh my God, I was having a conversation with a client of mine who has a ton of tattoos, a lot of neck tattoos, and he's in the financial services industry. And he was like, I want to get this neck tattoo up to here, but I'm worried that, it might negatively impact business. And I'm like, it probably will for a certain demographic that are going to look at you differently. But at the same time, you're going to attract a demographic that relates to you. So, which one do you want to do? Do you want to pretend to be somebody else, or do you want to just be you and attract people that resonate with you? So,
Yeah.
it's an
So
interesting point.
powerful.
The thing that I find funny as we're talking about this is the fact that we so desperately want to be liked by everybody, but at the same time, we don't like everybody,
Mhm.
right? So like we know that like it's impossible to like everybody. And we know it from like the inside out, but the other way. And the craziest part is you don't even know if those people would have liked real you more because you're reading their mind, which is just what you're going through your life up to that point, and you're like, okay, in the past, this kind of behavior has meant this kind of person. So in the past, this person I handled in this way. And so you're just generalizing one person based on your past experience and thinking that you know what somebody wants or thinks about, and you have no idea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We give ourselves way too much credit for being mind readers,
Yeah.
like really making these stories and assumptions and jumping in at what we believe is right. And I say it all the time, E, I'm so glad you brought that up, where I'll ask people when they're like, well, I don't want these people to be upset with me. I want them to like me. And I go, do you like everybody? Do you like every single person? They're like, no. I'm like, it's hypocritical then. Why is it okay for you not to like people, but you think everyone has to like you? And that's a big shift, right? That's been pounded in our psyches and our subconscious from the beginning of time. Whether you had to bring your teacher an apple, whether it was like get the A, say the nice thing to somebody constantly. How do you earn somebody's validation? And you know, like them liking you.
I'm curious. So you had this realization. What were the steps that you used to really find yourself and figure out who was that version of you that you needed to be and wanted to be?
It becomes almost like this spider web. When you think about it, it's like one question leads to the next. So when I said, "Why am I doing this?" and then I realized I was exhausting and I was showing up, that prompted this, "Why am I not the same person at home or with my friends that I am in the office?" And that started to bring up the imposter syndrome and going, well, because I believed that I had to have this 4-year degree in order to earn people's business and trust. So you start to debunk some of the beliefs that are in your head. It's like, okay, well, is that necessarily true? That was my belief, like he said, right? We come up with these stories, but is that necessarily true? I mean, obviously, I'm creating business and you can also go out there and find other confirmation biases against it. Who else is doing this that doesn't have that 4-year degree that's doing it successfully? So you start unwinding that a little bit. And then it's like, well, if I showed up as who I am, what would that look like? And that's when you go, oh my gosh, I don't even know who I am because I've worn all these different hats for so long. So that leads down this road of going, I've got to get to know myself. And probably heard me talk about that, right? You have to have this relationship with yourself. And once you start getting to know who you are, all the pieces start to come to life. And you're like, oh, this is what I love. This is what I want. This is what I'm great at. But the big missing piece was I didn't have a relationship with myself so that I could actually know who I was, so that I could show up as who I was.
Could you share some tips on that? Because completely agree. And honestly, have I figured that out entirely? No. Like that's something that I still pay attention to. And I would love to
Mhm.
hear it from you. What are certain questions or thought process that you go through to figure that out for yourself and when you're working with clients?
As you're answering that, one of the things that I would love for you to give an actual like frame around in when you're answering those questions, how do you keep yourself honest with yourself? Because I think there is a huge component to growing that is awareness and acceptance. And there has to be that honesty as you're looking at it. Because again, if there is no honesty, you can ask yourself all the questions, but nothing is going to change.
Absolutely. Yeah. Great addition there. So, first of all, step one is that we have to have self awareness. And I read a study the other day, and it was like an IQ study by a psychiatrist out there, and it showed that 95% of people believe they are self aware, when in fact, only about 15 to 20% of people are self aware. People say all the time, I'm really self aware. But if you really dig deeper, self awareness is about being able to examine your thoughts and feelings and behaviors. Most people do not do that. They're not thinking about themselves, they're thinking about everybody else. So, the very first thing I have clients do is one, take a personality assessment. I love the Enneagram. You need something that you can use as almost a mirror of yourself so that you can go, oh, wow, that is me. Geez, I see that. You start to get some of that self awareness. And then literally ask yourself this question every single morning. How do I feel? It sounds so basic, but you ask yourself, how do I feel? That self awareness. You get to pause a moment and go, huh, I feel really tired. I feel excited. I feel unmotivated. Whatever it may be, it doesn't matter. You're creating self awareness. And if you do that every day, even throughout the day, hey, checking in on myself, how do I feel right now? At the end of the day, you can even ask yourself questions like, where did I win today? All of those are self-awareness questions that start to get your mind thinking about how you are feeling, what you're thinking, and that has to come before anything else. Because once you know, you can't unknow, and you have to know in order to grow. So that starts it there. And then I start to go, what else can we do to become more self aware about ourselves? And I go to values before anything else. What do you value in your life? What do you want to show up every single day? And most people, when you ask them, they don't know. So you've got to take a trip down memory lane and go, tell me about the last time you felt so excited, so full of joy in your life that you were smiling and you could probably feel it in your body right now. Everyone has a memory, and within that memory, there are values, whether it was connecting with other people, accomplishing, being challenged, competing, having spirituality. There's something in there that starts to indicate, what do I love in my life? You got to start there. That starts to build this relationship with yourself so you know yourself. And then tapping into the question you said, when you start to have a relationship with yourself, think about it. You each have relationship with people in your life. Are you honest with them? Do you value the relationship? Then you show up honestly with them. And the same thing starts to happen with yourself when you have this relationship that you actually care about.
And that's such a like great point to add after understanding your values. Because again, I feel that a lot of people, when you ask them what they value, it's a broken tape of like, I value this, this, and that. And you're like, really? Like, do you really value it? And that's why I wanted to like bring in the aspect of like honesty, because if not, you're just gonna jump into another story. And the worst part is that you're thinking that you've made a huge leap and a huge change, but you're doing it on the base on values that are not they're not true. And so you're still gonna feel that internal friction because you're like, I'm doing all the things. And you're like, yeah, but those are not the things that you actually care about.
Right.
You know?
Right.
But that's where I grew up on. It's like, and right?
I hope you're enjoying this episode of the podcast. We will get back to it in just a minute, but I wanted to share something with you about our Short Term Rental Secrets Facebook community. If you haven't joined it yet, I've got 4 reasons why you should. First off, it's completely free. Second, we have some amazing resources in there. First, you're going to get our deal analyzing tool that I personally built and we have used to analyze thousands of deals all over the world for our mastermind students at this point. I want you to have that completely free because the worst thing that you can do is get into a bad deal. It's very hard to fix your way out of a bad deal. So you got to know your numbers going into that. And I've got a free training that you can use to teach you how to use that tool effectively. The second thing is I put together a 6-part course on our Casper method on how I build businesses all the way from the beginning, how to set up my foundation, how to set up my entities, all the way through getting properties, automating, launching, scaling, hiring people. It is our unique Casper method that I use anytime I'm building a business. You'll have that completely free. Third, we have a live training every single week where it's either myself or one of our SDR Secrets coaches that are giving you free content, free actionable steps, and a chance for you to jump on and ask your questions to us directly, completely free. And the last and arguably one of the coolest things that we started doing lately is we're posting free co-hosting leads in that group every single day. So my team is going out and farming for these leads and posting them in the group for free for you to go and work those leads. And as part of that free training course that's in there, we'll show you how to go out and what to say, how to close those deals, how to onboard them, everything. So again, if you haven't joined the Short Term Rental Secrets Facebook community yet, head over there, click the join button. It's completely free. I'll see you on the inside. And now let's get back to the episode. One of the things that we were talking about, Angie, when we were in Nashville was the biggest quantum leap that I've experienced in my life always came when I upgraded my self-image. And I see this all the time, coaching thousands of people. It's always interesting that the first deal is always the hardest. Then once they close the first deal, that switch flips and then they're off to the races and they accelerate at an exponential rate. And the reason is because they start to believe that they can actually do it. But what I tell people is, all the neuroscience out there, it all shows that the mental rehearsal is just as effective as the physical. So I'm a big proponent of the visualization and creating that feeling of hitting your goal already, and then it will happen much faster. But I would love to hear your take on that and your experience with creating that image of that future self and that image of you hitting your goals.
It's everything. I mean, the mindset, I wish people could understand how powerful it is, and I'm sure you're constantly trying to relay that to people, but it's literally like our control panel. If we can master the thoughts that we have and see the things that we want to accomplish, you will get there. I mean, like you said, the neuroscience proves it over and over and over again. It's the hurdle of actually believing something that you don't believe. Like, people ask me all the time, "Well, am I just supposed to lie to myself? Like, I don't really believe I can actually do this. So am I just supposed to say I can do it?" And it feels fraudulent. It feels like they're lying, but we have to break down and go, "Well, how could you believe it? What basis do you have? There's a reason you don't believe it, so you kind of have to pick that apart. But what happens, like, when you're saying, they get that one deal because they do believe it? Before that even happens, I'll say to people, "What do you do on a daily basis?" Not even related to your goals, but what do you do on a daily basis that makes you believe that you will even show up for yourself? Because that's the very beginning of it. I don't care whether it's making your bed, whether it's going to the gym, whether it's keeping that personal appointment you had for yourself. There has to be some type of self-commitment that you have that makes you believe, like, I will show up. I don't know how to do this, and I don't know that I'm gonna be great at it, but I know that I will show up to do it. So it's a combination, right? We can feed ourselves the thought that creates the feeling that generates the action. That's part of it. That's the psychological, mental part of it. But I also need people to engage in action. And again, I don't care if it's making your bed or taking your supplements every day. You have to do some kind of action that shows yourself you can stick with something.
Mm.
Mm. I know you also have a ton of ways that you want to go, but I want to ask a question because what I've seen a lot of the times with coaching with myself, but also coaching in others, is how do you help people? Let's say that they start doing that, right? And they start changing, and then they self-sabotage. What is your thought on that? And like, how can people help it? Because again, like I know a ton of people that are like Monday through Friday, yay, Saturday and Sunday, nah, Monday through Friday, yay, Saturday, Sunday, yeah. But then again, what you were saying is like your mind is like, well, we're not really doing this then, right? It's not a commitment that we have. So how do you help people with that?
You've gotta have the real motivation and the purpose behind it first, because that's what's gonna anchor people. If you don't have that strong why and the passion or purpose behind it, then you're going to defer to your feelings, call it feelings-based decisions instead of conscious value-based decisions. And we're a society, I mean, look, we 85 to 90% of our actions, thoughts, beliefs are subconscious. We don't even process them, we just go, we're autopilot. You've got to be able to wedge in there real conscious belief. So I like to get people into this place of, look, I don't care what decision you make, just make a conscious decision. Do not let things happen without your involvement. Whether you are skipping the gym, whether you're choosing to have that extra drink and stay out late, whether you're choosing to spend money instead of save it for your next rental property, make your choices, but take responsibility for them. Ask yourself, am I okay spending this money? And if you start to get honest and conscious with yourself, you typically will start making decisions in alignment, going back to that real motivation, the purpose, the why. You'll start connecting those two. But we like to just operate in default mode and not take responsibility. Well, I was feeling this. Well, it was on sale and so and so wanted me to stay for an extra drink. Like, it's always being pawned off on somebody else, and when we don't take responsibility, then we don't get to drive the car. We don't get to be in the driver's seat of our life. So the self-sabotage comes from really being able to make conscious decisions about what you truly value and what your purpose is tied to.
Yeah.
I
It's almost
completely
like
agree with that.
we unconditionally show up for other people and we conditionally show up for ourselves. Because
Mhm.
anytime somebody else is like, I need you, you're like, okay, I'll do it.
Going back to being liked.
But then you're betraying yourself, right? And you don't, again, like, if you don't like me because I'm not staying out for an extra drink, with everything that I bring to the relationship, the friendship, I'm like, maybe we shouldn't go out for drinks,
Mhm.
right?
But in order to get in that spot, right, you have had to have developed this relationship with yourself that you care more about. And that's what people are afraid to do. They're afraid to put themselves at the very front of the line and sacrifice everything else. But we always have to constantly go back to, look, you're the executor, you're the creator, you're the one who's going to create everything in your life. If you don't treat yourself like that golden goose that you are, then it's not going to matter. Everything else is irrelevant.
Why do you think that is?
Again, going back to the whole wanting to be liked by people. We prioritize that over everything else. It's the paradigm that we have created in our minds. It's what our parents, impounded in our head, when we were young, all of that. So we just don't ever break it, and at some point in our life, we have to realize as you navigate your ages that you start to have that autonomy and you start to have that relationship with yourself. When you're young, sure, there's a lot of rules and you have to do things right and you have to play nice and all of this. But as you mature, you have to constantly reassess that and go, where am I in the line and where am I making decisions based upon what I want and what's important to me versus everybody else? So there's a real conscious shift there that our whole society misses out on. We just continue on that same path right through college, right through early adulthood, family, all of that. Where it's like if we had this cutoff point where it was like, okay, now that you're at the age of such and such, let's really think about what you love and the life that you want to build. But it doesn't happen.
One of my favorite books is Outwitting the Devil by Napoleon Hill. Most people have read Think and Grow Rich or they're familiar with it, but his other book, Outwitting the Devil, is my personal favorite book probably ever. And he talks about we never truly learn how to think independently. Like we learn how to memorize stuff and listen to other people and try and fit in and do all these things. And in the book, you know, the whole premise is he has an interview with, quote unquote, like the devil. And he asks
Mm,
him, why do so many people live basically mediocre lives? And he goes, well, because they never learn how to think and they just drift through life with no major aim of what they actually want. And he's like, when that happens, I just take hold of them and I just keep them mediocre and just feed them necessities and they don't complain. The people that really break free really define what they're going after, and then they're intentional with their actions like you were talking about, because once you actually start paying attention, I remember about a year and a half ago, I was like, "I wanna get fit, I wanna get ripped." I'm always in pretty decent shape, but I wanna get a six pack. So I hired a coach, did all these things, and just by tracking my meals on an app with all my macros, I noticed immediately within a month, 2 months, my body changed rapidly because I was paying attention to what I was eating. And if I was gonna go to a barbecue and they had cupcakes or a bunch of burgers and fatty stuff, maybe I have a burger, but maybe I have 1. I don't have that and a dog and the potato salad and a cookie and a cupcake, and the next thing you know, you've just consumed 1,500 calories in a lunch, So it's just making you more mindful of what actions are you taking? And that's why I harp on this constantly with people is what do you want? What is your goal? I did a call with somebody last night, 2 very brilliant guys. They have multi seven-figure business. And I'm like, what's the goal? They're like, to grow. I'm like, that's not a goal. How do you know that you're going in the right direction? So you just want to add a bunch of properties? Or is it, do you have to make at least 100 grand per door? Like, what are we talking about? Because what's going to happen is you'll hit that goal. And then all of a sudden, you're going to look back 5 years from now and be like, wow, we have all these properties. What was the point? Are they even making us money? Is this really what we wanted? There's no clear intention from what you're trying to do. So if you're brand new or you're getting started or you have a bunch of properties, what is the point of your business? Is your business actually serving you or are you just running on a hamster wheel just to get more deals, just to build more cash flow? What is the point of it? If there's no point, what you're just running. So to me, the first step is getting clarity about what you actually want, which leads me into what we were talking about offline of I do a lot of coaching and I always ask people what they want. And it's always some version of I want financial freedom. But then the follow-up question is what does that look like for you? Like if you didn't have to go to work anymore and you were making X amount per month, whatever you needed, what does your perfect week look like? And I'd love to hear from you how you think about that and how your clients think about structuring their weeks and what are the buckets that they look at when they really want to be intentional with their time.
and it's spot on the definition part, what you just said about what does that look like? What does that even mean? People speak in broad terms, and it's not because they're trying to be vague, it's because that's the way the brain works. People say to me all the time, I want financial freedom, or I want peace, or I want to be healthy. Okay, great. Define it for me. You have to define it and describe it. Healthy to one person might be, your six pack, right, Mike? And healthy to me might mean I just feel energetic. So you have to define what you want. Even for the littlest things, I tell people, define it. And they almost get frustrated because they're like, I don't know. I'm like, that's your work. So 100%, I'm on the same page with you. And the foundation of that, even going when people are going, well, I don't really know what I want. I don't know how to define that. We've got to go back to those values. I believe that when you really understand what your values are, whether it's time freedom, financial freedom, a spiritual way of life, connection with family, challenge, once you know that, that gives you the pieces to start building that roller coaster of your life, the track that you're going to ride on. And that gives you clarity. If you want financial freedom, great. What's it going to do for you? How do you envision how that's going to play out in your life? And those values have to be known for people to go, what's your ideal day look like? Because without them, you kind of make things up. But if someone says, I want time freedom where I can go to my kids' sporting games and I can pick them up and take them to school. Great. Now we have a clear definition of what that looks like in your day-to-day schedule and one of the requirements of whatever business that you're going to build. So it's really giving them the freedom to think about exactly what you said, the things that you want in your life and how they're going to look for us to start architecting all of that.
Curious too, because I experienced this, which is why I'm so passionate about it. Because once was able to leave my job and I had an open calendar, I just found myself staying busy because that's what I was used to instead of being intentional and actually enjoying having the financial freedom. Because I didn't really have a plan for what was going to happen once I actually got it. So I was just running for another year, almost 2 years, just being busy all the time without any real intention behind it. From what you've seen from a lot of your coaching clients, do they tend to, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but in my experience, it tends to be a whole package because if you're winning in one area, say the business side, but if the relationships are out of whack or your health is out of whack or your whatever spirituality is out of whack, whatever those values are for you, if you don't have that holistic package, it's not satisfying, it's not fulfilling, right? So, and this may sound cliche, but I want everybody to hear this because when I think about business, I think about building businesses that serve me so that I can have all of that.
Mhm.
So he always asks a question, so I'm going to steal the words from him. How do you cultivate balance as you're building a business?
And what is balance to you?
Absolutely, right? You have to define that. When I work with a client, I'll give you a very specific example. I work with somebody in the real estate industry and is a little bit burnout, wasn't going the way he wanted it, successful, definitely creating the financial freedom aspect of it and the time freedom, but was like, what am I doing it all for? So when we start to really craft that day and go down to the nitty-gritty, like, well, I want to be able to golf. I want to be able to go on this many trips with my family. I want to be able to leave the office by this time. You really start to have all those pieces to go, okay, well, how do we make this happen? And that's really important because again, those came from the values. If we didn't do the values and know that he liked those elements, it would have been really hard to plan for that. And then you're only left with like pieces of your life. Like, well, I got the financial freedom and the time freedom, but what do I do with this other space in my calendar? So again, really knowing specifically, if you like family time, how do you like that family time? Well, I like having dinner with my family. I like playing games at night. Okay, great. There we just took part of your calendar. So you have to really look at your values and then go, what do they look like in my life on a daily basis? I'm not a big believer in having to have every single pillar out there. You'll hear from some coaches that it's like, well, you got to have your friendships and you have to have your spirituality and you have to have all this. You don't. I really don't think that you do. When I work with a client and they fill out an assessment, I ask them to rate. How do you rate your financial life? How do you rate your spirituality? How do you rate all this? And if I'll have oftentimes spirituality is one of the biggest ones. And they'll say, well, it's a 3 or 4. What makes you say that? Well, I don't really have any spirituality. I don't really go to church. I don't really have a relationship. Are you upset about that? No. Well, then why is it a 4? Who are you measuring this against? Or even friendships. Well, I don't have a whole lot of friends, so I rated it a 4. Do you want a whole lot of friends? No. Do you enjoy hanging out with friends all the time? No. Well, then why is it a 4? Why isn't it a 10? It's just the way you want it right now. So we get into this habit of thinking that we have to have all of these pillars lined up and they have to be at the highest level when, again, if we go back to the individual values, some people are really going to have a priority of family time, of financial freedom, where somebody else may be like, I don't really care all that much about the financial freedom. I want to be creative. I want to be spontaneous. So everybody's a little bit different, and getting out of what the norm is, and sometimes I hate to say it, what all the coaches and the personal development books tell you to do is the best thing you can do. Get back to yourself and really understand, what do you want? I mean, I believe that health, wealth, mindset, and connection are pretty core pillars for me and most people. But some people may say, I don't really care about my health. I don't really care about connecting with other people. So be it. You have to figure out your own pillars of life that are going to make you thrive.
I love, or at least this is what I heard towards the end. The need to like kind of shut off all the noise. Because I think as you're cultivating self-awareness to then find out what your values are, you need to take a little breath from certain people, certain content, certain things, because we are constantly being told what to do or how to do it or what we're not doing right. And I remember when I started on my plant medicine journey, I was a podcast junkie. So it was like multiple podcasts a day. I had in my notes what the takeaways were and everything else. And my coach at the time was like, You're done with that." She's like, "I don't want you to listen to anything. I just want you to like sit with a journal and go through like, what do I want? Like, what am I working towards? What do I want? What do I feel? Why do I feel that way? What did I do today that made me feel that way?" Because that's a thing where the self-awareness for me really came through, is understanding, hey, I'm feeling great. And the end of the day, I'm like, I don't feel great. I'm like, wait a second, what happened? And there's always that one conversation, the one moment, the one thing that happened that you let your mind run on the old patterns. And you're like, "Ugh, I let that ruin my whole day." And so
Hmm.
it's like really cultivating that over time. And really just, if people don't support you and you're trying to do really big things, maybe stop talking to them.
I mean, that E right there, that's the relationship with yourself. That is, if people are listening and take away one thing, if you want to create anything in your life, you have to have a relationship with yourself. That is the very first thing. And that's exactly what you're talking about right there. We have to be careful that we don't go from caring so much about what other people think and tuning into them over to caring so much about what every expert and coach thinks out there and then focusing too much on them. It really should be, let me bring this information in. How does it sit with me? You are your own best coach. Trust me, I have plenty of coaches, and obviously we advocate for that, but you are also your own best coach. You have to spend time with yourself asking yourself questions, or you will never, ever find out who you are, what you truly want, and what you're capable of.
And that's so well said. And that basically sums up what we were talking about earlier of we don't learn how to think, right? The whole point of listening to this podcast and reading books is you take in information, but then you need to think to process it of, does this make sense for me? Because I went down the personal development journey for years, and what you were getting at, Angie, and why I asked that question was I always felt like I was falling behind because I wasn't spending 2 hours on my perfect miracle morning, and I didn't have 25 pillars that I was measuring up to in all areas of my life, and it just felt defeating all the time. And somebody asked me the other day on a call, "What does my morning routine look like?" I was like, "Honestly, I get up at 4 AM, feed my baby girl. If she's not fussy, I go for a walk and have my green juice. I do a meditation, I start my day." Like, I don't have a
Mhm.
2-hour morning routine. I have children and a life and
Mhm.
things that what moves the needle most for me? Some type of moving my body. If she's calm, great, I could take her for a walk. If not, I'll walk at lunch, putting good stuff in my body in the morning and doing some meditation and grounding before I start my day, and then I go, right? And I can work at workouts where I can. I've got a lot of stuff going on like a lot of people. There's no right or wrong way to do it. You just have to think and get honest with yourself of what is going to work for me and be open to feedback and testing stuff, but don't beat yourself up if you're not doing 25 things to prime yourself in the morning to start your day. It's just unrealistic.
Right.
Mhm. I hated jumping on the little trampoline. Do you remember when Tony was like, "You have to jump on the and I had the trampoline, I would jump on it first thing in the morning." I was like, "I hate this. I hate it." I hate it. Like, this is not like it's in my garage. Like, I think I used it twice. I'm like, enough. Like, I'm half asleep. I'm gonna fall off this thing. Sorry.
Yeah,
I
you gotta
didn't mean
do
to
what
interrupt
is
you.
right for you.
Yeah, exactly. You
And
know?
Mike, what you're explaining, that's self-mastery. Like you've gotten to where you can create what you want when you know how to manage yourself and your mindset and help yourself operate at the highest level possible. And all the frameworks out there. Like, look, I have my book, I have my morning mindset journal. It's a framework. I have some clients that have done it religiously since the journal has been out for years. And I have some clients that are like, this was so helpful. And now, I kind of do it in my head and I do it when I'm walking on the beach or I talk with my spouse about it. Great. Adopt what works for you because you know yourself better than anybody else. So just like you shared, it's like that's confidence building. When you know how to operate yourself, what can't you do?
That's it. That's
I
it.
love that.
Which is a perfect transition because I know we're getting close on time. I want to be respectful of your time, but you've got an amazing podcast sharing wisdom. You've got the journal. You have a book as well. If you want to talk about any of those resources and where folks can connect with you before we get into our last question.
Yeah, absolutely. AngieWisdom.com. The name is real and it's easy to find out there. So you can Google that, Angie Wisdom Life Coach on Instagram. I do have a book, as you know, The Non-Negotiable You. I believe, like I said, that the relationship you have with yourself is the beginning of creating anything you want in your life. So it's always where I take people back to, whether they're a $100 million CEO. It's like, hey, how's that relationship with yourself? Because this is going to dictate what you're able to create in your future. And that's what the book is all about, being able to create that relationship to make you the non negotiable you. Then you're capable of whatever you want. And that's where when they say, great, I want to create, a portfolio of STRs or whatever it may be, great, you are that highest version of yourself. Now go learn all of those skills about creating what you want. The how to's is what is really comes down to.
Love it. Love it. Well, again, thank you for coming on. The last question that we ask all of our guests is what is your number one secret to success?
Well, now it feels a bit redundant, but
I know. Now we got to find
it
something
is
else. What's
that.
your number two secret?
It really is that relationship with yourself. I do believe that is the number one thing to success. And I guess that number two piece is following through with action. And and I know that sounds vague, but you have to commit and follow through with what you have set out, whether you think it's not going to work, whether you're afraid to fail, whatever it may be, because it's that action that you take, that consistency, whether again, making your bed, taking your supplements, whatever it is, that is daily programming your mind, telling you whether you can or can't follow through with something and make something happen. So don't negotiate with yourself on the things that you have committed to. Huge, huge thing there.
Love it.
Mm.
Love it.
Wow.
Well, Angie Wisdom, always a pleasure. Thank you so much for coming on the show. Truly appreciate you. And for the listeners out there, this is going to be one that you're going to want to listen to a couple times, take some notes, and get honest with yourself. Like E was talking about, spending some time with yourself, making that a priority and carving out that time. You might be wondering, yeah, but I want some tactical tips on how to grow my business. This is the foundation for growing your business as quickly and efficiently as possible by doing this work at the beginning and throughout the process, because otherwise you're just going to be running on that hamster wheel over and over and over again, feeling like you're going nowhere. And I'm speaking from personal experience here and coaching a lot of people that have gone through that same process. So, Angie, thank you again so much for coming on. Appreciate you. The listeners out there, hope you guys have an amazing week and we will talk to you soon. Hope you enjoyed this episode of the podcast. Before you take off, I want to remind you to join the Short Term Rental Secrets Facebook group. It's completely free. And remember, we are giving you free daily leads inside of that group to help you grow your co-hosting business. We're doing live weekly trainings on a variety of topics to help you launch, automate, and scale your business. And it gives you a chance to jump on video with me and my coaches to ask us your questions directly. You're going to get the free 6-part Casper course in that Facebook group. And I'm going to give you a copy of my deal analyzer so that you never get into a bad deal and you always know your numbers. So head over to Facebook, join the Short Term Rental Secrets Facebook community. and I will see you on the inside. And thank you again for being a loyal listener of the podcast. Appreciate you. Have an amazing week, and we'll talk to you soon. Hey, STR Nation, if you enjoyed this episode, please make sure to hit that subscribe button and leave us a review. And in the comments, let us know what topics you want us to cover on upcoming episodes, and we'll make sure to get that in the books for you. And if you really want to learn how to launch, automate, and scale your short-term rental business, if you want to go deeper, then check out our free masterclass at strsecrets.com.